You know, the idea of bringing back the woolly mammoth, or maybe even the dodo bird, that stuff used to be pure science fiction, right? Well, guess what? The technology to actually do it isn't just a fantasy anymore. It's becoming a very real possibility. And that, well, that raises a fascinating and incredibly complex question.
Okay, so here's what we're going to tackle in this explainer. We're going to break down how scientists even begin to decide which species might get a second shot. We'll look at the technical challenges first, then the whole ecological puzzle, and of course, our human responsibility in all this. And finally, we'll get to the big one. Who actually gets to make the final call? All right, let's jump right in.
So, believe it or not, the science has actually reached a point where, at least in theory, we can reverse extinction. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Just because we can do something, does that mean we know what to do? This new power, well, it opens up a much, much trickier conversation.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? The biggest challenge with de-extinction, it's not really the how anymore. It's the who and the why. I mean, seriously, how do you even begin to choose from a list of all the incredible species we've already lost?
Okay, first things first. We have to get into the nitty-gritty, the purely technical and genetic side of this whole thing. This is really where the sci-fi dream slams right into the harsh reality of biology, and honestly, this is the step where a lot of potential candidates get ruled out almost immediately.
So to even have a prayer of pulling this off, you need a few absolutely critical things. First, you need really high-quality DNA from the extinct species. Then, you need a super close living relative to act as a sort of genetic blueprint. After that, a surrogate mother who can actually carry the embryo. And on top of all that, you need to know a ton about the animal's biology. It's a massive checklist, and if even one thing is missing, it's pretty much a no-go.
Okay, so let's see how this checklist works in the real world. Let's take a look at the moa. Now, if you haven't heard of them, these were these gigantic, flightless birds that used to roam all over New Zealand. That is, until they were hunted to extinction about 600 years back.
And right away, we hit a massive genetic problem. I mean, it's a big one. Scientists do have moa DNA, which is great, but their closest living relative, it's a bird called the tinamou, which is way smaller and lives in South America. The thing is, their last common ancestor lived about, get this, 50 million years ago. That means there's a 100 million year gap of separate evolution between them. That is a huge genetic gulf to try and bridge.
So the bottom line here is pretty clear. Without a much closer relative to act as that genetic roadmap, and, as a surrogate mother, bringing back anything that's truly a moa is just an incredible technical challenge. From a purely practical standpoint, it makes them a really poor candidate, at least for now.
Okay, so let's move on to the next big test. Let's imagine for a second we actually solve all the technical problems. We still have to ask an even tougher question. Does this animal actually have a place in our world anymore? We have to seriously think about its potential impact on the ecosystems we have today.
And a perfect case study for this is the passenger pigeon. I mean, this bird once numbered in the billions in North America. Its extinction back in 1914 was an absolute tragedy, no question. But bringing it back, that might just create a whole new can of worms.
And this just illustrates the problem perfectly. Passenger pigeons weren't just birds, they were basically a destructive force of nature. I mean, a flock of 1 billion birds would have a massive impact. Think about it. Where would they even live in a world that's now packed with cities and farms? What would they eat? The world they left behind, it's just gone.
And this brings us to a really key ecological concept called trophic redundancy. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It basically asks, is the job that the extinct animal used to do, its ecological niche, is that job now being done by other species? Because if that role is already filled, bringing back an old player could just throw the entire system completely out of whack.
Okay, now for what might be the most complicated factor of all. Us. The human factor. This is where we get into our ethical responsibilities, our emotional ties to these animals, and the cold, hard, practical reality of where they would even live. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's a pretty sobering reminder of how recently we lost so many of these species. And the fact that human activity is directly to blame for their extinction, well, that creates a really powerful ethical argument for bringing them back. For a lot of people, this is all about righting a wrong.
Take the dodo. It's the ultimate symbol of human-caused extinction, right? But bringing it back faces a massive, massive problem.
Its home, the island of Mauritius, is now completely overrun with invasive predators like rats and cats, which, in a cruel twist of irony, are the very species we introduced that helped kill off the dodo in the first place.
And this really brings us to the ultimate practical question. For so many of these species, their original homes are just gone, or they've been changed forever by development, climate change, you name it. You can't just bring an animal back into a vacuum. You have to bring it back to somewhere. So where do they go?
But now, let's contrast the dodo situation with, say, the woolly mammoth. Here's the difference. A potential habitat for the mammoth actually exists. The vast Arctic tundra is pretty empty when it comes to humans, which means a revived mammoth population could probably live with very little conflict. And what's more, they might even help restore that ecosystem. This makes the mammoth a much more practical candidate. And you know, current projects are already pioneering new gene editing techniques, and even looking into things like artificial wombs to get around that whole surrogate mother problem. It's pretty wild stuff.
So, okay. After we've weighed the technical side, the ecological risks, and our own human responsibilities, how is a final decision actually made? As you probably guessed, it is not a simple checklist.
The reality is, there's no single perfect candidate. There just isn't. Choosing a species for de-extinction is all about complex trade-offs. It's this incredible balancing act between what's scientifically possible, what's ecologically responsible, what's ethically right, and what's just practically achievable.
And this is absolutely crucial. This decision is not just made by a few scientists in a lab somewhere. It requires a massive conversation between a whole range of people. We're talking conservation biologists, geneticists, ethicists, animal welfare experts, policymakers, and maybe most importantly, the public and the local communities who would actually have to live alongside these revived species. Their voice in this is absolutely vital.
So in the end, de-extinction isn't really just about the cool science. It's a profound test of our wisdom as a species. As we gain this almost godlike power to edit life and maybe even reverse death, we're forced to ask ourselves some really deep questions. What is our role on this planet? And what kind of future do we really want to build, not just for us, but for all the species we're meant to share it with?